My mom looked me straight in the eyes, lifted my dinner plate off the table, and dumped it in the trash. Then she said it like it was a joke, like it was normal. "You're lucky we even fed you." Everyone laughed. My sister's friends, sitting at the table I had just set for them, laughing with half-full mouths and eyes that glanced at me like I wasn't a person, just part of the furniture. My sister smiled, barely. She didn't say anything. She never did when my mom turned on me. I didn't cry, I didn't say a word. I cleared the empty plates and wiped the counter while they kept eating. I was starving, but that was the point. My hunger made her feel powerful. She'd done it before, in smaller ways, skipping me in conversations, giving my sister better gifts, complimenting her, ignoring me. But this was the first time she made sure I knew I wasn't just invisible. I was disposable. That night, I lay in bed with an empty stomach, staring at the ceiling in the dark. I had worked all day. My feet were sore from my shift at the diner. My hands smelled like dish soap and garlic. But none of that mattered. I wasn't a daughter. I was staff. And I had served everyone, even my sister's spoiled friends, before thinking of myself. But here's what they didn't know. I never forgot that moment. I replayed it 1,000 times. I held on to the way my stomach twisted, the sound of the trash can lid slamming shut, the way the food landed like it didn't matter. That plate might as well have been me. I didn't fight back, I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I made a promise. One day, I would never ask to be fed again. I would never wait for someone to hand me a seat at their table. I would build my own, and when I did, I'd choose who sat there. I'd choose who ate, and the day came. 10 years later, I was sitting behind a desk in a restaurant I owned, a place I'd rebuilt from the ground up with my own hands. It was known for its food, its warmth, and the way it treated people like family, the kind I never had. The door opened. 2 job applicants walked in, my mother and my sister. They didn't recognize me at first. I'd changed. I carried myself differently. My name tag said Seren Lin. I watched their eyes scan the room, trying to figure out who they were here to impress. They had no idea. Until I spoke. I grew up in a house that looked nice on the outside. People who drove by saw the trimmed hedges, the polished cars, the stone walkway that led to a double-door entrance, with an autumn wreath for every season. But inside, it was cold. Not the kind of cold you fix with a heater. The kind that settles into your bones. The kind that makes you feel like you're intruding in your own life. My name is Serene Ives. I was the oldest daughter. But in my family, that didn't mean respect or responsibility. It meant silence and obedience. My mom, Clarissa, liked to play favorites, and I was never hers. That spot belonged to my younger sister, Jade. She was bubbly, pretty, loud in a way that drew attention, and knew exactly how to tilt her head to get what she wanted. Our mom saw herself in her. She used to say that Jade would go far, that she had that spark. When it came to me, she said I was steady, which was her polite way of saying boring. My dad, Gerald, was there, technically. He sat at the dinner table, nodded through conversations, and left early for work every day in a cloud of cologne and silence. He never raised his voice, but he never raised a hand to help either. I think he learned to keep his head down and figured I would do the same. He loved us all, in theory, but love without action doesn't mean much. From as early as I can remember, my role in the family was clear. If the table needed setting, I set it. If the groceries needed unpacking, I did it. If my sister needed a ride, I took her. No one ever said thank you, it was just expected. If I ever asked why, my mother would scoff and say, "Because you're the responsible one." But what she really meant was, "Because I can make you." Our house had a kitchen with marble counters and copper pans hanging on the walls like decorations. But only one person ever cooked, me. Clarissa hated the mess, and Jade didn't care to learn. I taught myself how to make dinner through old recipe books and YouTube videos because it gave me a little control in a house where I had none. In school, I kept to myself. I had good grades, but I never went to dances or joined clubs. I worked a part-time job at a diner just off the highway, saving every tip and every spare dollar. I had a plan. Not for revenge, not yet, just for escape. I was going to community college after graduation, then culinary school if I could manage it. I didn't tell anyone in my family. They would have laughed, or worse, dismissed it like a silly dream. Clarissa didn't believe in dreams. She believed in results, appearances, control. Our house had rules that weren't written down but were more real than anything on paper. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't challenge her even when she's wrong. Don't cry. Don't ask for help. Be useful or be invisible. And I was both. Jade had friends over all the time. They'd come in laughing, tossing their bags on the couch, calling my mom Mrs. I like we were in some sitcom. She loved it. She soaked it up. She let them drink soda out of the wine glasses and play music too loud and treat me like a waitress in my own home. I would cook for them, clean up after them, and then disappear into the background while they posted selfies in my kitchen. There were moments, small ones, when I thought maybe I was overreacting, that maybe I was being too sensitive. But those thoughts disappeared the minute I sat down to dinner after serving everyone and saw my plate thrown in the trash. It was that moment that made everything clear. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't part of the family. I was a function. And once I saw it for what it was, I couldn't unsee it. That house, that family, that life, I didn't belong to any of it. So I started planning how to leave. Not with a bang, not with a fight. Just quietly, like someone slipping out the back door of a party they were never invited to. It was Jade's 17th birthday, a Saturday in early spring. I remember because I had worked the breakfast shift at the diner and walked home in shoes that were 2 years old and blistering my heels. I came through the door at 3 p.m., still in my uniform, still smelling like fryer grease and burnt toast. My mom was in the kitchen giving orders like a drill sergeant. The counters were covered in grocery bags, half-chopped vegetables, and cupcake boxes. She didn't greet me. She didn't ask if I needed to rest. She just looked up and said, "Good, you're home. You can start prepping dinner." I glanced at the dining room table. It was already set for 7. Jade's friends were arriving at 6. That gave me 3 hours to prep, cook, clean, and somehow disappear before the party started. I didn't argue. I never did. I dropped my bag, tied my apron tighter, and started chopping. By 5:30, the kitchen was alive with heat and motion. The oven was full, 2 pots were boiling, and the smell of garlic and rosemary filled the house. Jade floated in with Kylie, Naomi, and Bree, trailing behind her, all of them talking at once and laughing like their voices were on fast forward. My mom handed out fizzy drinks in wine glasses and pointed out how Seren made everything from scratch. Isn't that nice? They didn't thank me. They didn't even look at me. They were already posing for pictures, spinning in new dresses, sliding into seats at the table like they had grown up there. At 6:30, I served them. I brought out plates of roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, grilled vegetables, and fresh rolls. I poured water. I refilled drinks. I picked up napkins that dropped to the floor and smiled when Jade pretended not to know my name in front of her friends. When they were all settled and laughing over something on Kylie's phone, I quietly fixed myself a plate. Nothing fancy, just enough to stop the hollow ache in my stomach. I sat at the edge of the kitchen counter, far from the table, careful not to make a sound. And that's when my mom saw me. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. She walked over, lifted my plate right out from under me, and without pausing, dumped the entire thing into the trash. The sound of it hitting the plastic echoed louder than anything else in the room. "You're lucky we even fed you," she said. The table went quiet for a beat. Then someone laughed. It wasn't cruel. It was confused, awkward, the kind of laugh people use when they don't know how to react. Jade didn't say anything. She just looked away like she wasn't related to me at all. I stared at the food in the trash. It wasn't about the meal. It was about control. That plate was mine. I had cooked every single thing on it. I had served everyone else. And when I finally took something for myself, it was taken from me. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I stood up, picked up a stack of empty dishes, and went to the sink. I scrubbed every pan. I wiped down the counters. I made sure everything sparkled, just the way she liked it. Then I walked upstairs, sat on my bed, and stared at the wall until the party ended. The next morning, there were crumbs on the floor and a pile of soda cans in the sink. My mom didn't say anything about the night before, neither did Jade. It was like nothing happened, like I hadn't been humiliated, like I didn't matter. But something had changed. That night had cut through the last thread of hope I was holding on to. I used to think that if I just worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, maybe they would see me. Maybe they would care. Now I knew better. I wasn't going to beg to be seen. I wasn't going to wait for anyone to feed me. I started looking for second jobs that same week. I opened a new savings account my mom couldn't access. I talked to my manager at the diner and asked if I could pick up more shifts. I stopped coming home for dinner. I ate at work or packed leftovers in Tupperware and ate in my room. I began to build something, quietly, steadily, without permission. And every time I felt tired or small or scared, I thought about that plate in the trash, and I promised myself I would never be in that position again. Graduation came without celebration. No party, no dinner, no congratulations. My name was called in the high school gym, and I walked across the stage alone. I saw my classmates with balloons, their families hugging them, flowers in hand, pictures being taken in the bleachers. I scanned the crowd once, but my parents hadn't come. My sister said they were busy with some work emergency, but I knew the truth. It just wasn't important to them. I didn't wait for anyone afterward. I walked home in my cap and gown, changed clothes, packed my things, and left. No announcement, no argument. Just a bag over my shoulder and my savings tucked into my sock. I moved into a room above the diner where I worked. The owner, Mrs. Halverson, was kind enough to offer it when she saw how hard I had been working and that I had nowhere to go. It was small, just a twin bed and a kitchenette, but it was quiet and mine. I didn't need anything else. I picked up as many shifts as I could. Morning prep, lunch rush, closing. I worked double time, cleaning, cooking, learning. I saved every dollar and watched every YouTube video I could find on restaurant management, food safety, plating, and small business strategy. Every night I took notes. I had no business degree, but I had willpower and time, and I used both. It was during one of my late-night shifts that I met Mr. Linwood. He was in his 60s, gruff but sharp-eyed, sitting at the counter drinking black coffee. I had served him a few times before, but that night he stayed until closing. As I cleaned the floor, he asked, "You the one who makes the chicken gumbo on Fridays?" I nodded. He nodded back. "That's not diner food, that's soul food. Where'd you learn?" I shrugged. "Trial and error." He smiled. "That kind of flavor doesn't come from guessing. That comes from having something to prove." From that night on, he started coming in more often. He'd sit at the counter and talk about his years running restaurants, how he'd opened and closed a dozen spots up and down the coast. He had owned a place called Linwood's Hearth before his wife passed, and the business failed. He never went back after that. I listened. I asked questions. Eventually, he invited me to see the old property. It had been closed for years, but the bones were there. A brick oven in the back, a large kitchen, a space full of dust and history. "You could bring this back," he said, "if you want to work hard enough and if you've got vision." I didn't even blink. "I'm in." We signed a co-ownership agreement. He put up the lease. I put in the labor. For the next 4 years, I built that place. I cleaned moldy tiles, scrubbed out grease traps, painted walls, built shelves, and handled deliveries. I learned everything from licensing to staff management, and when Mr. Linwood's health began to fail, I took over every responsibility without being asked. I renamed the menu. I restructured the staff. I made it a rule that everyone who walked in would be treated with the dignity I never had. I didn't just want a restaurant. I wanted a refuge, a place where people like me, quiet, hardworking, ignored, could be seen. When Mr. Linwood passed, I held the funeral in the back garden of the restaurant. The staff came. Customers came. He had no children, but he left me everything: the building, the rights, his recipes, his trust. I changed my last name to Lynn, not legally at first, just professionally. I wanted to carry something better than what I was born into, something that meant legacy and care, not control and silence. I was 26 when Linwood's Hearth finally turned a profit. 27 when a write-up in a local food blog tripled our reservations overnight. By 28, I was opening a second location in the city. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who respected me, not because they were afraid of me, not because I demanded it, but because I had earned it, and I had done it without ever going back, until they came to me. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind that usually meant slow lunch traffic and time to breathe. I was in my office at Linwood's Hearth, going through the next week's interviews. We were expanding the team. New hosts, kitchen assistants, a few waitstaff. The second location was in the final stages of opening, and I wanted to make sure every hire matched our culture: respectful, collaborative, focused. I opened the next folder and froze. Two names stared back at me, Clarissa Ives and Jade Ives. For a full minute, I didn't move. My mind scanned every possibility. Was it a coincidence? Could it be someone else? But the handwriting on the application looked familiar. So did the phone numbers. So did the tone in the cover letters. Polished. Proud. Just enough desperation beneath the surface to betray what they were trying to hide. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. 10 years. That was how long it had been since I'd spoken to either of them. I hadn't heard from my mother once since I moved out. No calls, no letters, no apology. Jade had sent me a single message 2 years ago asking if I could co-sign a car loan. I never responded. But here they were, applying for jobs at my restaurant, not knowing who owned it. The irony hit hard, not in a cinematic way, but in a quiet, personal one. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't part of a master plan. I had spent so many years just trying to survive, trying to matter. And now, somehow, they were sitting in my lobby, waiting for me. I called my assistant and asked her to send in the next two applicants. When the door opened, I recognized them instantly, but they didn't recognize me. Clarissa looked older, sharper at the edges. Jade looked tired, like someone who had been walking through life without a map. Neither of them made eye contact for the first few seconds. Clarissa was the first to speak. "We're here about the hostess positions. We saw the listings and figured it wouldn't hurt to apply." Jade nodded. "We're flexible, if that helps. We can start right away." I let them speak. I watched them. They had no idea. Then I asked, "Do you remember a dinner party you hosted?" "Jade's birthday. You invited some friends over. A girl cooked and served everything, then sat down to eat and her plate was thrown in the trash." Clarissa blinked. "Excuse me?" Jade turned her head toward me, eyes narrowing. "Wait." I didn't wait. "You said she was lucky to be fed." Clarissa stared at me, silent for the first time in her life. Jade's face drained of color. "You don't remember?" I asked. "I do. I remember every detail. I was that girl." They were both quiet. I could see it now. Recognition, then disbelief, then panic. "Serene?" Jade whispered. I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. I sat up straighter, looked Clarissa in the eye, and said, "My name is Seren Lin. I own this restaurant. I built it. I trained every staff member, designed every part of the menu, and created the culture you're trying to walk into, and you're here asking me for work." Clarissa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked down at her lap like maybe she could disappear into it. "You treated me like I didn't exist. You raised me like I was a burden. You never saw me as a daughter, just someone to cook and clean and stay out of the way. And now you're sitting here, needing something from me." "I didn't know," Clarissa said quietly. "I know you didn't," I said. "That was always the problem." Jade looked at me. "We really need this job. Things haven't been easy." "I'm sure they haven't," I said, "but I don't run this place the way you ran our house. Here, we treat people like they matter, and that starts with the people in the kitchen, not just the ones at the table." I stood. "I think we're done here." Clarissa didn't argue. She didn't yell. She stood slowly and walked out. Jade followed her. As the door closed, I sat down and exhaled. Not in victory, not in anger, in peace. For the first time, I had said everything I had carried in silence, not to hurt them, but to set myself free. They had once decided whether or not I got to eat. Now I decided who got to work in my kitchen, and I chose peace. After they left, I sat in silence for a long time, not because I was overwhelmed, but because something inside me had settled. For years, I imagined what I'd say if I ever saw them again. I pictured shouting, breaking down, demanding answers. But when the moment came, I didn't need any of that. I had already won. Not in the way movies show it. There was no applause, no dramatic music, just stillness. Power in knowing I had become the kind of person I once needed. And more than that, I had done it without becoming bitter, without turning into them. Later that day, I walked through the restaurant like I always did. I checked on the kitchen crew, complimented a new server on her timing, stopped to help one of the dishwashers fix the sprayer on the sink. This place was my home now, not because I owned it, but because I built it with intention. I had taken the pain I grew up with and reshaped it into purpose. We don't just serve food here. We serve people. And we treat everyone with dignity, whether they walk in through the front door or the back. That night, as I locked up, I thought about how different things could have been. If I had stayed silent, stayed small, if I had believed I wasn't worth feeding, if I had let their voices become my own, but I didn't. I chose differently. I didn't become successful to prove anything to them. I became successful so I could give myself the life they refused to offer me. One where I was allowed to be seen. One where I could choose who got close to me, who I invited to my table, and who I protected from the kind of harm I once knew too well. In the months that followed, I heard from Jade once. She sent an email. Not long, no apology, just a few lines asking if we could talk. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't angry. I just didn't owe her anything. I spent so much of my life putting other people's comfort ahead of my own, and I wasn't going back to that. I forwarded her resume to a friend at a bakery 2 towns over. I didn't vouch for her, but I didn't sabotage her either. I didn't need revenge. I had peace. One evening, one of my younger servers, a girl named Talia, asked to stay late and talk. She told me her mom always made her feel like she was too much, too loud, too emotional, too ambitious. I listened. I didn't try to fix her pain. I just let her speak. Then I handed her a plate of warm bread and sat with her at the staff table. "You belong here," I told her, because no one ever said that to me, and I needed to say it to someone else. People think stories like mine are about revenge. They expect a moment where the bad people suffer and the good ones get trophies. But the truth is, healing doesn't look like that. Healing is quiet, it's personal. It's learning to sit at your own table and not feel ashamed that no one else said it for you. I don't know what happened to my mother after that day. I don't ask. I don't check. What I do know is that the cycle stopped with me. And now, when I see someone walk into my restaurant with eyes full of fear or shame or hunger of any kind, I remember who I was. And I remember that my power isn't just in what I survived, it's in what I became. Because of it, I became someone who never throws anyone's plate in the trash. And that, to me, is everything. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or like you had to earn love that should have been freely given, I hope you know this. Your value isn't decided by who fails to see it. You get to define your worth. You get to build your own table. And when you do, you'll never have to ask for a seat again. If this story moved you, please take a second to like the video. It really helps more people find it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me. Have you ever had a moment where you chose to rise instead of break? I'd love to hear your story, and if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and powerful, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you never miss the next one. Thanks for being here. I see you.